Second item on the agenda is continuation of hearing case for the application of Factory Midstream LLC, 501 Television Drive, Suite 1200, Canonsburg, PA. For special exception pursuant to Article 5, Section 190, subsection 16 on the zoning ordinance of Penn Township as of Section 31. Property involved is requested in 5,033 Woodbridge Road, traffic PA. Penn Township. The tax map parcel number 55 03 00 0 021. Total acreage size is 219 acres. Property is zoned industrial commerce. Mineral extraction. Village development is natural gas compressor station. This time, I will turn the meeting over to our solicitor, Mr. Singh.
Or last time. Had an issue about study.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Last even brought up with
Great.
slide around.
Yes, sir.
Probably. Plus on intercepts. So. A copy of the work. Which will now to be higher. The objection from my Nigerian was that study this kind of general public set of characterization.
It's not been published, let alone peer reviewed.
That it was generated by the government agency to assist in study of potential effects.
Yes, it was funded by the Department of Health.
I talked in general, the board has not seen it since 19 but I don't agree with the objection.
I do, Mr. Sweeney. There are 3 different reports. There's the childhood cancer, asthma, and birth outcomes that were all part of the study undertaken by the Department of Health and the University.
Saw but not.
Yeah, so I have all 3 here separated. Did you just review, maybe we only sent you the childhood cancer study because that's the first one we spoke about. And so after the meeting, I said, I'll send you the childhood cancer studies. Okay, so there's also an asthma one and a birth outcome one as well. It was fun. It was all part of the same package. Yes,
That is correct, in that there were 3 separate reports that were generated. I would, to the extent that the speaking class is going to testify about these, which sounds like that's the intent, or I would object to that because he's not an expert in epidemiology or public health or medicine, and these are not environmental related studies. These are specific health outcome epidemiologic studies. So I don't believe that this witness, putting aside the issue of whether they're peer reviewed or not, is an appropriate expert because of
Well, the objectors have of establishing that all the requirements in special exception, they have the opportunity to demonstrate, in spite of that satisfactory threshold, that the operation is still have. Public health safety. Workers. I think for that's so different some stuff that fast generated study. Read cancer. But institutions so uh, that producing market.
Yes, Mr. Sweeney, actually exhibit 14 was a presentation that the Department of Health put together and published. It's a PowerPoint that helps, regular people understand what the studies are, and that was exhibit 14. Was a summary that was prepared with the study. And the other studies, how about if we mark the childhood cancer study as exhibit 15? The birth outcomes is exhibit 16, and the asthma study is exhibit 17. And we'll mark those and then I'll hand those out. Okay.
Or, 17. I had this one.
You're right.
They are.
And I will hand out copies of exhibit 14. So Mr. Sweeney, I'd also like to introduce Mr. Glass's expert report and provide copies of those as an exhibit. And that would be marked as exhibit 21. And we were finishing up his testimony with respect to the opinions he would be giving as well. So I feel like I can wrap that up here. Ms. Fox, thank you for returning and preparing the reports. Thank you. So we did leave off on the childhood health study and the other studies that DO looked performed. And you had discussed, you started to discuss what is exhibit, protect PT exhibit 14, the PowerPoint presentation. To take a few minutes to review that and discuss the high points for it.
Well, there were three separate questions that were to be answered. So it's
Let me back up just quickly. You're an expert in due diligence, correct? Due diligence in these types of contracts. So as part of your due diligence, do you normally look at the health effects of the area that you're diligencing, basically?
well, that can be part of it. Due diligence, site assessment, site characterization, taking that into understanding.
And so with respect to the findings of PIT in the Department of Health, what were the findings specifically with respect to childhood cancer? Okay. I can pull the PowerPoint up too, and put it on the screen here. You mean the one pager? Or,
Well, I actually summarized.
oh, yes, please refer to your report. I digress. Sorry. Yes, please. And as exhibit 21.
Certain pictures that attention to or to ask people ask living close to wells during production phase. Increased chance of asthma. Second is related to at 5 to 7 times chance of falling, which is relatively rare to and with regards to bird outcomes. It's important to hear those during
with respect to the health studies, and that will move on to the ordinance itself.
I don't.
Now we're going to move into the question, sort of full circle back to where we started your testimony with respect to some of the information that you reviewed and that was not contained in the application. So in your opinion, it was the Hyperion application that was critical information, specifically information regarding air emissions and radioactive emissions.
It's. There is rate. Very interested to see air quality studies specific. Assess this. No information. So that again, that's to just situations.
And so with respect to the information necessary to determine whether or not this project is extraordinarily detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare, is it your opinion that the lack of this information makes it difficult, if not impossible, to measure the detriment to health, safety? And so, in your opinion, would the emission of radioactive elements be extraordinarily detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare? So with the compressor station, if there, that you testify that there would be radon emissions coming from the compressor station, is that correct? Without monitoring or measuring those levels, could it be extraordinarily detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare if that's not monitored?
It's probably, I'm sorry. I would object before that, but would it be detrimental? It's speculative. With that, as the question is phrased.
I'll move on. Now, Mr. Lash, you reviewed the ordinances, correct? Associated the performance standard 195, 190-635. And I'm going to take you down to this highlighted portion here. I'm going to direct your attention to section L, which I have up on the screen here. And and subsection L with respect to electrical disturbance or radioactivity. Would you agree that the ordinance states that no activities which emit dangerous radioactivity or continuous cumulative low-level radiation at any point not be permitted? Would you agree that the ordinance states that?
I do recall some.
I'm trying my best with being able to put this stuff up on the screen. Mr. Sweeney, are you okay if I read that section? Electrical disturbance or radioactivity. No activities which emit dangerous radioactivity or continuous cumulative low-level radiation at any point are permitted, and no electrical disturbance adversely affecting the operation at any point of any equipment other than that of the creator of such disturbance shall be permitted. And would you characterize the radon that could come from, that will come from the compressor station as potentially low-level radiation?
Yes, it is radioactive.
And will that be continuously emitted from the compressor station when it's operational?
Studying
And going back to some of your testimony, I'll ask, is it your opinion regarding the fact that Westmoreland County is an marginal reputation area for ozone in particulate matter, that additional cumulative emissions could be extraordinarily detrimental to the public?
I would say objection because we're entering the wrong speculation. Could be extraordinary.
with regard to the subject checks. With regard to particular matter, this state. That's those
Thank you. I'm sorry. As part of my question, I meant to also note that, part of your testimony that Westmoreland County is also a monitoring monitoring area for particulate matter in your answer address that as well. Is that correct? And the opinions that you've given here tonight, are those each within a reasonable degree of scientific certainty? That's all I have for now.
Study. Pretty long. Process. Yes. Yes. David.
I can't know these studies now. Mr. Sweeney, I would like to ask that the exhibits 18, 19, and 20 be admitted together with Mr. Glass's expert report, which is exhibit 21.
I've already heard this objection.
And one
You're a principal of the downstream strategies. Does that mean you're a co with the program? For how long? have you been? You're familiar that I take you with, a report done by downstream strategies in 2013. Entitled Water Resource Reporting and Water Equipment from Marcellus Shell Development in West Virginia. And that was, funded in part by an organization called the Robert and Patricia Switzer.
objection. I'm not sure of the relevance of funding of a study that Mr. Glass worked on 10 years ago.
Why is your
Yes.
This is average.
That's
It was funded in part by the Robert and Patricia Switzer Foundation. I can refresh your recollection if you need me to. Let me hand you a copy of that. I refer you to the acknowledgements, which is the first page after the cover sheet. Sure, sorry. Water resource reporting water footprint from Marcellus Shale Development in West Virginia. I'm not marking this as the, but I give it to you. Does that refresh your recollection in the acknowledgement section?
The authors.
But you think-
Testimony and make sure.
No, I know, if you go to your principal, you were a principal at the time. Now you go to the acknowledgements. So we thank the Robert Patricia Switzer Foundation for funding this project. Correct?
It's the authors.
And then it also says this project also would not have been possible without the support and assistance from the Earthworks Oil and Gas Accountability Project, correct? And then it goes on and says, our downstream strategy, smart glass principle, monitoring and remediation provided valuable feedback and ideas, correct?
Correct.
Then it also says that Skytruth Communications Director David Mantis helped facilitate the use of Skytruth's chemical database now, correct?
Yes.
Are you aware that Skytruth supports a dam project? Are you familiar or aware that Earthworks supports a ban on all oil and gas drilling? Are you aware that the Switzer Foundation supports a ban on fracking?
Mr. Clementon, right, I would ask that this report be entered into evidence if the accusation is to bias with respect to this report. Instead of reading footnotes and thank yous, I think an actual copy of the report should be admitted into evidence.
I have no objection with handing it out, and it's not the question.
I don't need to be the board's copy. It's also.
Thank you.
I'm not sure you want to give a mark as deficit or not deposition as hearing exhibit G. If I can turn your attention to the first page of this, it's a letter authored by Earthworks to the Maryland Department of the Environment. You see that?
Yes.
And under general comments, it says the best way to protect our community's environment and natural resources from the adverse impacts of oil and gas development is to end our reliance on fossil fuels as soon as possible.
Objection, Mrs. Hirschman.
As to the admissibility, that's correct. She can process it. The nature. Bias.
It says no amount of regulation makes drilling safe. The department should simply prohibit all oil and gas drilling in Maryland. See that?
Yes.
And does this indicate to you that Earthworks supports a ban on oil and gas development? Let me share.
What's this document?
I'm sure you're looking for is included H.
Have that out, just. Stop.
Correct. It's hard to support families. They don't, right.
And Mr. Sweeney, Mr. Black,
Uh,
well, I was just gonna say asked and answered, he doesn't know Skytruth's leanings, I think that going through the same questions, isn't the best use of time, since he's already answered those questions.
As far as question. I haven't determined.
First of all, are you familiar at all? Have you ever heard of Spectrum before I pointed out that they were involved in the article? You were also for the downstream strategies that you were also involved in.
I'm familiar with instructions.
And are you familiar that they have assisted in providing data to support a mail practice?
I mean, I know the kind of work.
Look at the last paragraph, the second page. It says that it's incredibly exciting to see our workplace have such a direct role in policy making. And before that, it says that Maryland's legislature considered their work when it chose to extend the state's family practice. Correct, you see that? In the last paragraph, the second page.
Yes, yes, it's in this.
They say, way to go, Maryland, correct?
Yes, this. This article does say that, yes.
And then, let me show you one of their markets, exhibit R. And you see that this bears at the top, Robert and Patricia Switzer Foundation. And it's entitled Exposing the Hidden Dangers of Fracking, correct? And the picture shows two children, one holding up the sign, "Don't frack our future," and the other holding up the sign, "Keep the oil in the ground," correct? And downstream strategy has not only had the report we looked at funded in part by the Switzer Foundation, it's also had fellows from the Switzer Foundation that has done work at downstream strategies, correct?
Yes, but I'm gonna ask you to show me any pictures that I state stuff like this, that there's anything in my credentials, or anything I publish about. It's taking this. Huge associated with things that I
Well,
present.
you were involved in the last report, the author thanked you for their assistance.
I provided
Yeah.
valuable insight information. It's just.
And then let me show you another report done by Downstream Strategies. This one in 2012. It was happened against Laura Bush. Megan Vetcher. How about Christian Thomas? Let me show you this, I'll mark it as J. Agree with me, would you not, that this is a report, it's entitled In Everyone's Backyard, Assessing Proximity of Fracking to Communities at Risk in West Virginia's Marcellus Shale. Authored by 4 individuals, one of whom is a business partner, another of whom is a downstream employee. I think you said 2 of them were.
No, I didn't see that. So,
Oh, Megan Vetcher, yes. You would agree with me that this is such a report, girl?
such
It's a report entitled In Everyone's Backyard, Assessing Proximity of Fracking to Communities at Risk in West Virginia's Marcellus Shale, authored by Downstream Strategies, including your business partner and the downstream employee. And a downstream employee.
yes.
And if we turn to acknowledgements for this report, it also says we thank the Robert Patricia Switzer Foundation for funding this project, correct?
Yes, it does.
Testified both last month and this month about radon. You specifically testified last month and I think in a report about an article by, I didn't mispronounce his name, L.I. That was previously marked as exhibit 11. Do you still have a copy of it? I think I had it just let you refer to this location you too. It's again the previously marked as exhibit 11. You would first of all agree with me that you're not that these authors did not look at compressor stations, they looked at well counts, correct?
Well, they looked at geography and proximity to wells, which would include infrastructure. So that's
Somewhere in here, they say that they considered compressor stations.
they considered proximity to very geographic space.
To wells. Now, they concluded, did they not, that 100 upwind wells increases downwind millibecquerel per cubic meter by 0.02, correct?
In some areas, yes, it's different for different distances and different.
So if we look at table 1, turn with me to table 1. On page 3. The footnote there says the unit of the gross beta radiation is millibecquerel. Correct? That was the unit of measure that they were looking at to determine if there was any increase with 112, correct?
Yes.
Sure. MILL EEC QUEREF. They then said 1 millibecquerel per cubic meter is equal to 0.024 picocurates per meter. Okay, good. Now, you're aware, in your report on page 8, you say that the average U.S. radon outdoor background concentration is 0.4 curie per liter, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if 1 millibecquerel per meter cubed is equal to 0.027 picocuries. And in this case, in this report you're relying on, they found 0.027 picocurie per liter. You would agree with me that that finding is multiples less than the average U.S. outdoor background concentration.
So there's a bunch of things to answer your question.
Do you
It's
agree or
first,
not?
that background average zero. That's the average across the country. Globally, it changes, regionally, it's different, but that's the average across the country.
Average background.
And the average background, so that's the amount that's basically emanating mostly from the earth, from the radioactive decay. It's the major source of exposure we have radiation. Natural sources.
0.4 picocurie per liter.
That's right.
Objection,
And
Mr.
what-
Sweeney, if she could let Mr. Glass actually finish his testimony, she's interrupted him now to
You make a
time.
really good point. Is that
Although, can't talk to each other. She can't take down on the top. She shut. So it's, I can finish his answer. I never. Want to get something. That she has the opportunity to explain. So what I understand by talking about is there's a background, that's rate, national radiation concentration. Or no.
0.4.
Right.
So, Mr. Glass, just to confirm, it's your report, page 8, where you say that's the average.
you still finishing the last question?
Well, I was just trying to assist now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the last question is. Whether it was conversations. As the result of the study.
So, just to, let me ask my question again, you can start over with your explanation, but my question is, in the Lee study, 100 wells upwind of a monitor, they found increase the radon by 0.024 millibecquerels per cubic meter, correct? So we're on the same page on this.
Yes.
Okay. And 1 millibecquerel is equal to 0.027 picocuries per liter, right?
Yes.
And the average US radon outdoor background concentration is 0.4 picocuries per liter. So just so we're all on the same page about the numbers. So my question, and then you can answer with whatever explanation we give is. So I would be correct that the 0.024 millibecquerel per cubic meter finding of the Lee report is multiple times less than the outdoor background concentrations, which per your report is 0.4 picocurie per liter.
Yes. So the first part of my response to that is yes, the average background concentration. Authors found this was a magnitude smaller contribution. Statistically certain from background, given all of the control factors that they listed. Specifics for geology, spots, weather, long distance. So what they're saying is even given those fluxes, which form part of that normal up and down, day to day, time of day, month, season to season, year to year fluctuation, which averages out to zero. Above that, they noticed a statistically significant now, that it's very small comparatively. But that's just for 100 bucks. What it's demonstrating is that it's discernible, it's an increase. Whatever that background is at any given second, it's increasing that exposure. So yes, that's important. Small. That multiply that by the scale
You understand that this hearing today is about the compressor station. That's proposed use, correct?
Yes,
Now,
I was talking about the significance of this.
you testified last month that all areas, both the Marcellus Utica area, which is our area, correct?
Yes,
As well as the Texas areas and the other areas, showed a statistically significant correlation to proximity to ducts. I can show you your testimony. Did you recall saying that?
well, that's not true.
I know,
I
go on,
I
but-
might have misspoke,
Oh,
but I'll correct that.
yeah,
I mean, the
go ahead.
opportunity. Any
I mean,
comments? All
objection,
about this. Fact. Stuff. Maybe I'll answer.
Once he's gonna say what you told him is what you meant to say, you didn't describe it, actions. Right,
Yes, if I made a mistake or misspoke, I apologize and take the opportunity to correct that. That in all of the areas, the sub-regions that these authors study, there was a statistically significant increase, except in the percentage part. And I talk about that report, specifically of attention to that, because it was very interesting. I spent a lot of time trying to understand why that would be when all of the other correction factors said that it should be the most significant because of types of geology we have, these other setting factors. Out of naturally occurring material, production rate of that, we would expect to see much bigger. That's the explanation that authors can come up with, and I concur. It's simply, we don't have monitors that are downwind of where all the stuff is happening. Most of the monitors, I put a map in my report. Maybe I didn't, I should have. I want me to show you. Just look where these monitors on my EPA, see where they're located. There's a map actually on page 3 of this same report that shows where the monitors are located. If any of you want to take a look, you have a copy of the report. Okay, so on page 3, the figure at the top, you'll notice the orange triangles. The orange triangles that are outlined with black are ones that were determined to be deoxide. On top of the gray areas, near the gray areas, which are the areas of geology that are excluded for gas production. So if you look in our area, where the only one orange one is located, it's west of Pittsburgh. That's the one that people in Westmoreland County, east of Pittsburgh, would have representing them. So that's west upwind of the wind direction. And that's why I think they didn't find a statistically significant relationship down, even all our other data. It should have been where it was the biggest. And that points out that we don't have this stuff.
So, we talked about how even in these other areas where it was statistically significant, the statistically significant increase from 100 wells was 0.24 millibecquerels per cubic meter. And you acknowledge that it's very small, even in correlation to average background.
objection,
So,
Ms. Kondo is testifying, if she has a question.
She's just trying to. See, it's-
I'm getting to my question. My question is, did you bother to calculate how many multiples less that is?
Well, I can see the numbers talked about. It's And doesn't talk about. Compressor station emissions. That's compressor stations. Emissions.
Move to another teamwork study or reference that you discussed before, and that's the DEP team study. You're obviously familiar with that because you reference it, correct?
Yes, it's the name of the study.
It's, I'm sorry, it's the DEP teamwork, that's an acronym, it's all caps, TENORM. And teamwork stands for what?
That's said for technological. It's national.
And DEP did a study of that as it relates to oil and gas development, including sampling gas at compressor stations, did it not?
Yes.
And it concluded,
Compressor stations.
Mr. Flash. Gotta have a seat. She's. I heard the question.
and DEP concluded, did it not, and I quote, there is little potential for additional radon exposure to workers and the members of the public at or from natural gas compressor stations. Correct? Did I quote that correctly? I can show it to you if you need me to.
Well, they're talking just
I
about
heard-
radon, they're not talking about projects. It's important. It's not just about radon. It's radioactive progeny, which is much longer exposure to just radon.
So
But yes, PADA makes that.
then you would ask then this zoning hearing board
Also makes it.
Again, let her ask the question.
and so you're asking the zoning hearing board to replace DEP's conclusions with their own, correct?
Not correct.
You agree that Pitt, the University of Pittsburgh's reports have not been published, let alone in a peer-reviewed journal, correct? They haven't, I think you know that, well, straight. They haven't been published in a journal, a scientific journal or a medical journal, or a public health journal, whether it's peer reviewed or otherwise, correct? The asthma study didn't even look at compressor stations, did it?
Studies specific.
So, I'm gonna read from page 55 of what's been marked as exhibit 18, which is the childhood cancer case control study. And, feel free to read along if you want. There should be a copy of what's marked as exhibit here. So I'm reading from page 55. There's a heading 4 childhood malignancies combined. The last sentence of the report says no evidence was observed that exposure to other UNGV related sites. So on my page 55, I don't know if you
Section.
right after table 19C. My copy is 55, so the report must have been reissued at some point with some different page numbers. But
So this would be at page 56 of the exhibit under section for discussion.
correct, you are. So if you go down to the heading 4 childhood malignancies combined. The last sentence said, no evidence was observed that exposure to other UNGB related sites, for an i.e. compressor station, impoundment pond, wastewater facility sites, close of brand, or to other environmental risks, i.e. TRI, UMTRA, and superfund sites associated with the risk. Correct? Everybody correct?
Is it correct that they did observe that? It's, yes.
And,
Look for evidence of that.
you don't know.
To you.
I'm not here to answer the questions, you're the expert. I believe that you testified that with respect to the birth outcome study, there was a 1 ounce overall reduction in term birth weights, which you'll recall the report author said poses little health risk. A baby being born on average 1 ounce smaller than another baby poses little health risk. Correct? You recall making that conclusion. And you didn't testify about all of the negative findings, and by that I mean no correlation findings of all the other different cancers, all the other different birth outcomes. I think you did testify that there were a number of those findings. You just didn't identify, correct?
Yes, I explicitly mentioned that to be sure.
I know that earlier when I asked you some of your qualifications, you acknowledged you're not an epidemiologist.
Correct.
Even though you're not an epidemiologist, do you look at and evaluate certain limitations to studies, and what they're able to conclude, what they're not able to conclude?
Yes.
Okay, so in the PowerPoint, which your council has marked as Exhibit 14, on page 26, the list of the limitations of studies such as these. And these are the head authors themselves put together this PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
So the first bullet as a limitation, they need studies such as these examine associations with disease and not causes of disease. Correct?
Right. That's why I was interested in this.
They rely on the quality of the existing data, correct?
Yes.
They estimate associations for groups of people, not individuals, correct? They assume, quote, all wells are created equal, and they do not include variability by source, correct?
Correct. They don't have that kind of.
And they were unable to accurately track changes in residential history after birth in all cancer cases. So they assumed that whatever the residence of the child was at birth continued for purposes of looking at their well count to be their residence thereafter and until they got this, correct? Okay, can you show me how they, first of all, it says inability to accurately track changes in residential history after birth in all cancer cases.
That's correct.
Okay. And in fact, they did a survey. They had a survey where they actually talked to people, got some of this information. Then they had a group that they were only able to look at their actual birth records, correct?
Correct.
You're aware then, I assume, that in the survey group, when they were able to talk to people about the residents, they didn't find the same correlation. And then finally, a limitation is that studies like this do not, the authors put not in all caps, NOT, identify what specific hazardous agents associated with health. Correct?
Said.
I've never.
Just a few questions on the interact. Thank you. What other industries does downstream strategy for and represent? Diligence, monitoring. So your work is across the spectrum into industries such as the gas industry. Now, with respect to the questions regarding monitoring and health impacts and children born at a lower birth rate, asthma, childhood cancer, does Hyperion's application show any monitoring of the radioactivity or the other causes that were in those studies? Does the application seek to monitor radioactivity or health outcomes?
See.
And would you agree that the emissions and the waste that come from oil and gas well sites is the same waste stream that comes to the compressor stations? Maybe specifically with respect to produced water. And what is your understanding of the radiation levels of produced water or drill cuttings or any of the other waste that's generated by oil and gas?
I'd like to point the questions back was talking about drill cuttings, which you can testify that drill cuttings are represented in the compressor station gas.
One last question. So in your opinion, does the cumulative effect of the use of the property that will include a compressor station and two oil and gas well pads, that cumulative effect would have an extraordinarily detrimental effect on public health, safety, and welfare?
Extraordinarily, it's all the data to. It's one of these things. That's not
Is there anything else you would like to clarify about your testimony? Thank you again. No further questions.
No, nothing for
Trying to understand. Earlier I asked the question if there are other gas, natural gas compression stations. That there are. So they release the same types of emissions based on particular matter that this proposed.
the same type of yes, every institution
They're significantly larger than they expect. Larger fishes.
That's it. That's what's just coming up. That's adding in X-rays and medical procedures. Closer to the sun. All these add still outstrips. So even when this condo was talking about these very small quantities, doesn't, I mean, my point is that I'm not saying it's doubling it or tripling it or anything like that. I'm saying it's added to it. Whatever it is, it's added to it. That increases. It, is your question just pertaining to the compressor station?
Well, no, just oil, gas, industry, the above compressor station, just.
That's a fantastic question. I wish we had measurements that could tell us the answer.
I'm asking your expert, she's trying to get an idea of how that compares to what's good. Right. Yeah, trying to get a feel for it.
I would expect that indoor exposure.
The composition of natural gas, well, it's different than natural gas, the composition.
First comes out of obviously there's mixture. So if so those all get taken out. That's all first stuff. Radon, just to talk about, that's all preserved through all these processes or it's emitted to the air. So by the time from the well is supposed to, its source was Earth geology. Some of those have seconds. Years. So that stuff sticks around. But that's what happens. So when there's a difference in radon concentration in these other gases, well, that radon concentration is the reason. Remember, radon's going away, it's just turning into something else radioactive. That stuff accumulates inside pipe. Inside pipelines, and that's why in that PAP study, the team study, this they did find that needed this additional study, additional worker protections was those pipes operations. There's exposure to all those settled out particulates that are inside. And there's not protections. So to answer your question, and finally comes out somewhere where it's used, like stove, to heat stove, that. Those concentrations. There's one really kind of famous one where I did that's very interesting. Criticisms. And so even when that paid up team, where they look at that issue too, they're like, you don't turn the vent on. Okay, you get an exposure that's not good. So that's what they say.
It's generated like reduced water. That's those are disposed of. It's not.
We will. Depends if different operators have to do that, but first, generally, they're stored in some way. Back for some periods of time. Very much like, but unless those are closed, gas closed systems, those are all radon activities. The cuttings that have radiation. Use waters. That's a good question. That's the key. Concentrations. And drill cuttings, because they're doing the vertical part, straight down there. Get down to these very limited, rich geologies that also have determinations. Drill cuttings that come up. Come back to the surface, that's their gas containment issue. So people do actually do that. I have to see this. Generally, they're stored somewhere. Use water, same water comes out. That's either standard water. At this church.
growth out of all that stuff.
That changes.
Um. I printed that we are. They've been subject to talking about anything else.
No objection. No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then I'll more. Oh,
I asked.
this is the one you asked, and I didn't want to ask.
The market is exhibit K.
Oh,
West
okay. So you have to be.
Now, if you want to link to what you.
Do it afterwards.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Protect PT called, Mr. Lewis Martin as their next, witness. Hi. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to hand you what is marked as protected event 22. And, do you recognize this document?
I do, it's my secret.
States following for the record.
Important. GHORN.
And we're just gonna jump right into your education. And where did you go to undergrad?
North Carolina State University.
And did you graduate with a degree?
I did, I graduated with a bachelor's in science and mechanical engineering.
And where did you go to postgraduate school?
Purdue University, where I graduated with a master's in science and engineering with concentration in physical physics and
And your experience, your career path, could you please talk about that for a little bit?
so generally, typically all people in my field, voice control engineering research. Specialized discipline mechanical engineering. So we deal with generation of radiation, frequency, vibration, propagation of noise and the impacts and results. Part of that, we do a lot with community and environmental noise. I deal with community and environmental noise ranging working with communities to develop and evolve modern science-based noise releases, testing and analysis, climate, and then a bulk of what I do personally is actually mechanical engineering.
And you represent a wide variety of clients and different industries.
Literally work across several dozen industries.
And what are some examples?
Extractive industries, mining, oil and gas, heavy industry, manufacturing, product manufacturers. I do a lot with medical and scientific facilities. A lot of the world is impacted by noise and vibration on levels that are millions of times smaller than those that impact humans. Growth,
And have you mentioned that you have experience in engineering compressor stations?
yes, so our firm was actually founded in 1984. I was the director, took all those engineers to start. Give them such type of person.
And how many sound impact assessments have you?
See, there's really no such thing as rates. It's a made up plus. Generically in our industry, so the specific phrase, sound impact assessment or sound impact analysis. It's not defined, it's not standard. Around a lot of engineering. Standards, you guys organizations can see their standards. Generally, it's not.
And how many times do you estimate that you testify as an expert?
Between court, actual lawsuits and quasi-judicial settings, probably.
It's tricky to like offer Mr. Gordon as an expert in sound impacts and assessments.
Briefly.
See you again, see you again. Just a couple questions for you, that you talked about your education credentials. Do you have a degree in public health?
No,
On
I have formal training in part of my graduate degree, audiology training from the audiology department, as well as
and with this, you have a degree as a doctor of ENT.
No.
And then I pronounce it here, so word it's otolaryngology.
well, close enough. I've never heard it pronounced quite the same.
Now, John's asked a question about sound impact assessments. You said
Community noise study.
in essence, the have to reject what sound levels would be in the future based on the design and operation of any particular system.
And probably more importantly, assess the impact.
And what do we call it? Sound impact assessment. You indicate you've done those. You've done it for natural gas.
Yes.
How many of those?
Probably a couple dozen at this point. Only half of them that need to be setting, the other half actually working. Yes.
Have you done any presentations? Green Washington projects. Probably some more. Oh. Thanks. Can't tell us, but I don't know specific. Bear in mind, in a given year, it doesn't administer. What properties? Mark West, Great Resources.
And you want to start this protected secret at 23. And do you recognize the document?
I do.
And Mr. Sweeney, I would like to say that this report we made a change that it's addressed to me instead of Mr. Cirilano at Protected T, who got a copy that was addressed to Mr. Cirilano. That excuse my handwriting, that's terrible. I'm sorry, go ahead. What is this document?
It's the noise report, noise letter.
And one of the questions that I think is important to ask is, what are we talking about when we're talking about noise or sound? Could you describe the differences between noise and sound, if there is, and the components thereof?
Generically, sound is simply vibration propagating through the medium frequency rates. Sound. Noise by convention is simply all.
And what did you do to prepare for your testimony here?
I reviewed the Penn Township noise ordinance. I reviewed some reports and submissions.
And with respect to the ordinances, let's go through that. So when you said you reviewed the noise ordinance, do you mean ordinance 190-635 performance standards?
That's correct.
And you stated that you reviewed in your report subsection A and subsection K, correct?
That's awesome.
So and one other report that I'm just going to bring up now, if you referenced it in the report, is the solar collectors and wind energy systems at 190-643, correct?
Correct.
So if we go back to the performance standards in section A, in section A of the ordinance, where it talks about compliance, do you remember what that section had about compliance? Yes, please.
No use, land, or structure in district shall involve any element or cause any condition that is dangerous, injurious, obnoxious, cause offensive odor, smoke, dust, dirt, noise, vibration, glare, excessive traffic, track vermin or rodents, conflict nuisance,
or be a detriment to the health, safety, moral, or general welfare to any other person.
Now, is it correct that the ordinance is structured with respect to noise? Just from a high level, break it into two different categories. There are objective standards and there are subjective standards. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so those standards, would you agree, are section K of that ordinance?
Yes, sir.
And what are the objective standards in the ordinance?
The objective standards, to the best of my interpretation, I say that this language, this section four, is a bit vague. But basically, it's objectively sets maximum decibel levels. Important to point out, there are literally dozens of metrics, vary in their time averaging, their energy averaging, frequency weighting, and others that are all called decibels. Instead, the ordinance does not specifically stipulate the methodology, methodologies, and metrics. But for residential uses, but it also limits the noise as a function of the emitting property. So no noise source on a residential property can be in excess of 60 dBA. That's the emitting decibels. So that's decibels and overall sound level, frequency filter off. Explain later. For any period of time between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. in excess of 80 dBA for any period of time between 7:01 p.m. and 9:59 p.m. The use of maintenance and so commercial uses are limited. They may not exceed 90 dBA for more than 2 hours during a 24-hour. By reading of that means there's no upper limit. It says they may not exceed 90 dBA for more than 2 hours. That could be 140 dBA. So the jet engine. So it doesn't set it up. So it can't exceed 2 hours. And also by reading of that means there that a commercial use is allowed to hit 90 dBA today. Also, industrial uses have basically the same limitations. It's really important because this is the level of occupational safety and health administration actually sets legal limits for nuisance. These limits are based on epidemiological noise studies conducted by NIOSH. Basically, what OSHA stipulates the federal law stipulates is that at 85 dBA, conservation program, at 90 dBA, so this ordinance allows sound levels at the property with industrial and commercial use that would trigger the OSHA required even above that. Either levels of
And I'm going to quickly go over this, basically the only question I have on solar collectors and wind energy. Do you remember what the decibel level limitation was for those uses?
60 dBA.
And, sorry.
So no, the maximum sound level, in this case, the ordinance uses a term maximum sound level. It's actually an ANSI standard that means that may not exceed 60 dBA.
Did you see anything in ordinances that explain the difference between the levels for industrial uses versus solar collectors and wind energy?
I did not see any difference.
And you had mentioned OSHA levels and that they set a level of 85 for hearing conservation and protecting the environment. What are some other standards that you're aware of that agencies such as the EPA refer?
So when we look at nuisance and annoyance, basically what noise levels would constitute nuisance? So human activity, interference, speech, interference, relaxation, a sleep interruption. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and EPA, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, all three separately set noise targets or limits of 55 dBA. These are a little bit different. They actually use 24-hour average that penalizes the nighttime noise. They said day-night noise levels 55 dBA. It's also important to point to these relative numbers 90, 60, and 55 dBA. We talked about relative differences in sound. General rules of thumb. 3 dB change. We just increase the volume by 3 dB, 3 decibels. The average person is very perceive that. If we increase the noise level by 5 dB, the average person clearly perceives that. And if we increase the noise by 10 decibels, the average person that's double. Every time we increase the sound, 20 dB increases. And all of these relationships are established based on 80 years of jury testimony.
So that's a great overview, thank you. And so I want to just turn quickly back to the ordinance and the subjective standards that are in the ordinance. What is your understanding of the subjectives?
Just that they are subjective by the language and appears they're intended to prevent noise that be induced in this region. Many other communities also have sound that induces the city residential place. Residential area at night sets a maximum of 35. So half the slots that Murrayville and Monroe.
And so you said half of what the government, I think you meant half of what the ordinance.
Less than half, but so Pittsburgh allows 45 dBA at night. That half is allowable as per EPA.
Now, so would it be true then that there could be a violation of the ordinance on the subjective standards, even if it met the objective standard of 90 dB?
I would object. That's false for me.
That's okay. That there could be a violation of the ordinance under the subjective standards, even if the 90 dBA were met with respect to nuisance.
Close to that.
Now, one of the difficulties in evaluating noise and sound is the lack of consistent definitions and use of terms. Is there a gold standard that is used in order to be consistent across ordinances and regulations?
Yes, and as with a lot of engineering states, American national standards, there are many physical standards specific.
And does the ordinance reflect those standards?
It doesn't appear to. A lot of the language is.
And did you review Hyperion sound assessment?
I did.
And does that report include the standard?
Partial. Some of the terminology used is consistent.
And what is your understanding of the surrounding receptors, such as residences? At the distance or
I don't recall that the distance.
close enough proximity to have these.
So what modeling did Hyperion use?
It's a little hard to tell. So there is a standard, across our industry, federal government, put out by ISO that is used by a number of software companies. So in other words, these software companies take this standard and they produce commercial software that they shed practitioner. Client model that standard. So that there's an item, basically the software, the PM software is supposed to reflect however, it also requires the practitioner all of the standards. It's both saying all of us learn early in engineering, so sort of just because you have a really good model doesn't mean assumptions. Model results are these. Thorough model is supposed to clearly, objectively state assumptions.
And did Hyperion report to that?
I'm gonna pose an objection at this point. Experts report that we provided by the board from the witness does not mention Hyperion. The purpose of the expert report is to find notice to other parties, general subject of the testimony. There's not one word in this report criticizing or mentioning or evaluating vision of Hyperion.
Absolutely. Eventually wise, we have some that. So. Question.
So the question was that Hyperion's report used that.
It used the GAN software. It did not strictly focus on the elements of recommendations of the next standard based on specific model. Starts with an objective list of resources, comprehensive resources, and specifically the sound power. Sound spectrum, truly. There's a difference between sound power and sound pressure. Sound power is the cause. Sound pressure is the sound field out in space. It's the effect. It's analogous to like you go to the Lowe's or Home Depot, a certain light, certain sound pressure is then how bright it is. It's extremely critical to accurately replace the inputs that are being sound. And the reason is it's an objective, complete quantification of the energy. Which often done as a shortcut is to simply go some distance from the sound level and take a sound pressure level. And it makes an assumption about what sound power was that caused that. Very well established in all of our literature and our industry and in the standard that methodology is a lot of error. Why the standard requires that measure the sound. Sound. And good practice is also to include notations about what standard we follow to measure the sound. So that any reader, team.
So let's talk about the compressor station and the other infrastructure that are going to be on that site with respect to. So the sound that would be associated with the compressor engines, the site? How would you describe the sound that would come from the compressor?
For the most dominant aspect, unique aspect is that it's. What I mean by that, I'm talking sound here, a rate of roughly 20 versus 20 vibrations per second, low end, 20,000 vibrations per second. We don't hear all of those frequencies. They propagate differently, they radiate differently. Typically, internal combustion equipment, whether it be diesel, natural gas fire, emits a lot of low frequency energy, bass sound, deep fog, bass sound. It's a really important distinction because low frequency sound propagates long distance. Low frequency sound has very long wavelength. Low frequency sound has a very long wavelength. Because of that, it's long distances. It's most of low frequency sound propagates very readily. Anybody has ever lived in a heart or music space, hear that big enough to tell the hear what's being said. Internal combustion engine base sound that propagates. Understanding.
So how does that relate to a decibel?
So specifically, the decibel level, sound pressure level, decibel is the aggregate of all. It's just a signal overall. Specifically, your ordinance uses the a weighting is frequency that basically rejects and ignores frequency. So a weighting fundamentally underestimates any type of noise that has significant frequencies. It's common that you read in textbooks say that a weighting is how it's how you respond. Is found when that 80 years ago. A lot of the originally started our industry. Found that continues. Simple A-weighted decibel is very predictable. Because of that. Bottom line, the ordinance uses a decimal.
Now, what about with respect to the generator engines? There are two generator engines on the site.
Potentially the same thing. So these engines, compressors, another site. There's fundamentally there's cooling heat exchangers, fans, fans and radiators generate low frequencies. And there's actually just the exhaust.
And the also on site is what is generally described as a pigging operation. What is the noise associated with launchers or receivers?
So it's a little bit different. So a lot of the noise sources that would be on the compressor would be added pretty much all. Things like pigging or pressure pulsations and other things, very loud things that don't speak.
And they would true for, project programs. And so with respect to the noise that will be coming from this site, would you agree that the main source of noise would be the 6 compressor engines that are running continuously?
Generally, but to elaborate on your last question, the blowdowns and hitting and things like that. My reading of this ordinance doesn't set any limits. They can be decibels. Jet engine sounds. As long as they don't.
So that reminds me of the Hyperion's application. Do you recall seeing analogies to other sources that were pulled that says from various internet sources? So, I mean, when one is looking at trying to figure out what this is going to sound like, is it fair to make those types of analogies?
I have never, most of my professional colleagues have never explicitly. Draft talking about very small noise source comparisons to close distances. That blender lawnmower may bother somebody. That have much higher sound. Get sound power from many. Sound.
What footprint would you expect from the compressor station running 6 engines?
There's no simple way to predict that without knowing the sound power and the objective specific noise controls.
Would you agree that compressor stations, for the most part, would fall under the A-weighted decibel rating?
I'm going to object.
Do you understand?
I think I do. I think so. My understanding is you're asking, would a lot of these noise sources be ignored or rejected?
That's correct.
Yes, because literally the A-weighted decibel, A-weighting is hot pass. It passes through energy above a certain cutoff frequency, wipes out energy below that frequency. That cutoff frequency is 5 hertz. So the base sounds basically attenuated by that. If we measure a compressor that has no muffler, no intake silencer, no anything, very loud, measure the A-weighted decibel, it's going to underestimate how much sounds. We're taking C-weighted decibel or other metrics. So, with loudness that are specifically meant to capture. We get fundamental measuring of frequency voice. We're using the light.
And there's a lot of discussion about ambient noise. Would it be possible to have a noise that's less than 90 dBA, but it's a different frequency and therefore a different tone that may be foreign to the ambient environment?
Absolutely, just because two noises have the same sound measure doesn't mean it sounds. Doesn't mean it's the same. It doesn't mean it's the same.
And so on a property such as this, where there'll be a compressor station and 2 oil and gas well pads, how do you aggregate or measure the sound from all of those sources?
If you want to do it objectively, we would put the sound power of all those sources on. It doesn't have to actually be that complicated. We know the sound. But they are additive. They do.
And there are different types, is that right?
Potentially. Some may be steady state, some may be transient. frequency. Subjective perceived.
So one of the questions that would come up is what could hyperion do to mitigate the noise that would come from compressors?
So I will say, based on my experience, oil and gas, all the potential noise sources, compressor stations are at the top of the list for solving. They rarely are, and they can be in the technical. Start with a very effective voice control, not just a pre-engineered metal building, pre-engineered metal building, this installation. Start with a building that had transmission loss characteristics. That's how we measure and rate the amount of noise reduction of the wall, the roof. So we would determine the noise spectrum, sound power spectrum, right, in that building. And we would engineer a building meant to attenuate each of those frequency bands by sufficient amount. We are choose quiet bands, quiet heat exchangers for radiators, heat exchangers, and we add effective inline silencers. Now, just because a fan is pulling the air into the building doesn't mean air noise doesn't propagate out. It's the air. So any opening or air path in that effective noise building has to be voice control with an effective silencer. It's very common across many industries that they just say that they're going to use a critical grade silencer, or a hospital grade. Those are meaningless terms. It's about like small, medium, large, and fast food restaurants. It's not standard. So instead of a generic technical sounding words like that, you again insertion loss. And how much insertion loss, how much wizard in each operating. Yeah, choose that silencer. We know what the noise source is, we know the sound perspective. We choose that silencer. Often there's objections because the silencer here effective silencer can be made.
So going back to the application materials, do you agree that there was insufficient information in order to come up with an estimate of the noise that would come from the compressor?
Yes, certainly looking at it as the independent parties. Simply not enough documentation that's objective ratings of sources, the actual objective performance.
And so then it would be difficult to describe mitigation measures for something that you can't quantify. Is that true? And so you had talked about some of the effects of basically, would you call it noise pollution? Is that an appropriate term? Sure. And so what effects have you studied and are aware of noise pollution on surrounding communities?
So I think I touched this already, but a big part of my training, noise control engineer, it's not just a matter of measuring, predicting noise. It's not very important without knowing how we hear, how we perceive, how we act. So a big part of what we do, scientific community, these here is rely on sense of standards.
Consensus guidelines with respect to locating compressor stations.
They don't necessarily specifically address, like I said, compressor stations are a noise source. They're very effective. It's expensive, but it's technically quite simple. They're cheap. So it's not so much that they would set limits for compressor station residents. It's more that they would set interior noise
art is the noise of the matter, whether it's a steel mill, a concert, or a compressor station. Whatever noise is emitted when it propagates to that residential. Their should not exceed sleep. Have voice sources, it is for not sleep.
Even if those mitigation efforts were undertaken, that would eliminate the noise completely.
Just because the noise is reduced, pressure doesn't mean it's in. Our ears are miraculous system. We're able to hear very quiet sounds, even in the presence of other background noises. I've had a conversation in a noisy bar. So even very effectively, the compressor station still likely to be on.
And then is that particularly true for the low frequency, spectrum?
Absolutely, that's really the company. That's the. It's the ability, it's fundamentally. It's possibly an age of 30 minutes. Next box.
So the plan tonight to have their 30-40 minute cross examination and then my redirect tonight, or are we moving that to the June 3rd?
Finish. Yes. That I read.
Okay. I need. Oh, no. I need to know how to eliminate noise. Still, you say that. Because it's not about us, and it's still mistakes.
I could-
It's all
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
University.
Westmoreland County.
Oh, so you're right, so.
Yeah, I'll get it.
One just said part of hardware was closed. Flooding.
No, I'm just ready for- let's go for it. Hopefully I can-
My name's so repeating the times.
Oh, okay.
No,
That's actually, that takes people. That would sustain range for a day or two.
I'll talk to you. Yeah, that. Question. I have a question for. I think after we start doing this, I
No.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm all set here.
Right. All right. Yeah. Are you heard Bob? You know what, it was a weird night. I know I tried. Whether. Yeah. Yeah. I took a lot of notes. Oh, good. Do you want some water? Well.
Actually, I would love to. It's-
Oh, you can find a pot.
You've done good.
And I can-
I can. Yeah.
Okay. Should have gone. I know, I should have. I guess we'll see you then. Thank you. They will. Blue.
Visited. Like, oh,
I've been through that area in the past, I've been visited.
on road,
I believe so.
driven back to where it's exposed, it's like,
I'm not sure.
also, but it's very,
I'm not specifically.
was there any residential funding? At all? Private response. You visited, you mentioned, local. In the vicinity of site.
I believe it is.
Now I have to drive by there tonight. At the entrance. Hear anything,
Objection.
you know whether but you observe any sounds from side of that.
Not in the last year. There with don't honor.
For the production. Sound levels there. Really, right, fraction. Now we talked about critical of the township ordinance. What it out. Actually, right.
See. Okay.
Now, you obviously do. You have any information. Include that Icarian's operation. Of or compressor stations.
No, because the material provided, the application is not. I have provided.
Now, for some of these other projects. With compressor, that you prepared what I call sound access. Checks
More often I've used more complex metrics than DEA, but a lot of my section. Yes.
And you mentioned the Trojan Park West, and recommendations to them. Back to how they should design.
They had some contractors. Office of the equipment is leased. Knowledge.
And respect to those facilities, range of park West. What was the closest benefit?
First, to clarify my last, correct my last answer, some of the projects positive thing. Say, as far as how far residences, here's the presentations. Anywhere from 100 yards.
In your opinion, the constructed, design and constructed that you recommended, check with those, on the operation of those facilities.
If a restoration is really purpose in here.
Here, the testimony of Mr. President,
No,
here for the testimony of Mr. Burke,
no.
do the transcripts. Burke's testimony.
Briefly, it really throws up my head. It's a lot of very generic. Without spit, without specific characterizations.
Good sound to take your own sound impact assessment based on what you did know about the site, what you assumed. Gold standard.
Projects.
Well, express concern about what frequencies.
Absolutely.
Is that something that? That's sort of.
I expand that any over. It's a glaring.
And is there anything that you're aware of? Already atypical. Something other presentation. You undertaken any monitoring sound levels in your mountains? Where the Pennsylvania Turnpike, my sense of that township is. Like, correct, interstate vehicle traffic. Sound generated. That would include. In, correct, wrong. Vehicle noise, higher pavement noise, tends to generate both frequency sounds.
That's having voice.
This is the consultation. What the business on. What other fact, it's one of the other factors. Distance, okay. Absolutely. Reach a point.
Now, to back when they were fancy, this year was the year, even when that voice does stay in there. It's perceived that it has to come to very specific. Better off.
Place where you would. Or purpose. Going out downstream. So it's.
I have to just get back over.
But words and items.
I might have been.
Oh, 48. Township. Voting map. Bluish color designates areas of the township. So, here. For such areas, largest one. Second. You agree that in terms of maximizing distance. Whether it's based. So the district, which. Already compressor stations, because it's the most isolated.
Objection, Mr. Lucas, could please mark on the, in the zoned area where the compressor station will be to show it's adjacent to the mixed residential zoning map. So to talk about the parcel generally isn't specific enough in order to.
Yeah.
Not close to the certainty. Based on distance. If you point at any other location, township, zoning district. then, based on distance from residence. You point to any other area of the township that's industrial, so that would be more appropriate. than the sentence.
It's-
Look right across to the music to the south of that area. Where that's residential area.
It certainly seems because you can't tell what's located. For that matter, maybe village. With the yellow. areas.
Scale. Plus, right,
Always. Not properly engineered, not properly noise controlled. Station.
spot like that. I think we mitigated. Best way to mitigate sound.
Absolutely.
It's like my equipment. Like fans. Silencers. And you can also design. It's ready for itself.
That's it. Well, a bunch of different names for the same thing, but yes, we you can design all of those elements to achieve any, all right, versus any.
First time. Here. You presented with a stare and client had a series of questions, excerpts of the transcript. of them. Go to bottom page. Bottom of page 266, you are asked a question about that having noticed that Olympus Hyperion that included any type of sound wall or barriers for their applications for this boat station. I understood that question. Visual sound walls outside the building.
Memories of.
That if you read what was just five.
I believe it. So it's my understanding that to the extent that there are noise, source noise controls, strictly choosing quiet equipment, by designing a building that's intended to provide significant noise reduction, silence or muffage, directly as bullshit. It's always preferable to do source noise. Things like noise barriers and walls are best.
Then you're asking questions, so that's what common practice is to design sound barriers. Ways that evidence.
Is that they're used all the time, but no, that's practice.
That's the top of the standards. Around here. What I think is effectively, part of the house. What's your understanding of this? What's the purpose?
One is that HUD states an explicit target.
I mean, why does that happen?
To prevent government money from being used to build buildings that are uninhabitable. It's also worth mentioning that these HUD guidelines were developed along with HUD that were synonymous with what HUD was done in the 50s and 60s, basically. Robert's
I believe it was your testimony that the HUD standard is 55 dBA, is that correct?
That's the target. This is not the standard. This is a, these are their limits for funding. Well, criteria that when they're exceeded, they will not. Earlier, standards guidelines. Again, very explicit statements that they're targeted.
I'd like to call your attention to the page of exhibit there. Major federal code recognition. Now, what I think I am correct if I thought that, but standard below which no special approvals are required, the day-night average of 65.
Yes, but I think, this, yeah, right, that you're asking me where I got this number from, back on page 310 to paragraph 8, exterior, because they explicitly lay out that it's HUD's goal that exterior noise levels do not exceed the day-night average sound level of 55 decibels.
But they'll allow funding project of 65 without any special approval.
Standards specific to the parties. That is average. So basically, better sound than that the basis. Period. Equalize the nighttime levels, even a 65 dB daytime level. Significant.
Facebook's been planning for a time.
Yes, 1970. Very early.
But you're right. Go to the second page. The
Based on its interpretation of available scientific information as of 1970. EPA has identified a range of yearly daytime sound sufficient to protect public the effects of the park. It's very important that these noise levels summarized in table 8 not be misconstrued, misconstrued. Effective levels are provided without concern for protecting margin of safety to ensure their protected value. They must not be viewed as standards criteria. Rather, they should be viewed as levels below which there is no reason to suspect that it should be at risk for any of the identified effects of this.
go to the next page. Now, there's a Q&A bottom of that page. Question starts, how do I use this information for both purposes? Read that.
This question reflects the need to reconcile the economic and scientific document does not impose a decision on any level. Is it a source? It's best used technical decision to see effects of people considerations such as cost,
The next question, identify needs.
Opinion of the identified levels of carbon always considered pragmatically. It's unlikely that local, state, or federal regulatory strategies seek to obtain such levels. And 50 years back on reading.
Objection, and Mr. Thornton should be allowed
You're
to
taking this
answer the
up.
question.
No, your counsel can ask questions. I just actually. Or is no purpose. All the purpose. And where that ordinance in residential districts requires an LED for folks 50 like they right.
I see. There are also other parallel.
So addition
One of the things.
where that ordinance has waiver provisions. Granted by Are you aware of that? That the granted waivers from those requirements as it established the existing ambient levels to see.
I did actually do that decision, the decision based on document that you establish the that you can see limits. So that was the decision. It was that's true. There's a clear methodology spelled out.
Just two redirects, thank you. Mr. Martin, I'd like to refer to a document that, sort of this had to, has there been any updates in the last 50 years to?
As well as just, that's, for example, the first interview. It's not the other lines, it's.
So what would the takeaway be, for instance, if you were looking at the EPA guidelines, HUD guidelines, and the FERC guidelines? So what is do you think is the strongest takeaway for the recent?
Fed actually 55, a day night average 55.
Your opinion, is that why at 85 EPA, OSHA requires carrying conservation program?
Totally separate issue. It's just that epidemiological studies have consistently shown that if you use one simple metric, gateway test, when we start exposing workers,
And Mr. Lucas asked you about the case in Burnsville with respect to waivers that this may experience. Expound on the answer to that, please.
sure, it was actually shared with me after the fact. That there were some ambient voice studies that were done to argue that the ambient was already above the ambient observation.
Anything else you would like to clarify about your testimony? Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Talk about sign the bill section. Gas compressor stations. That
That's primarily get you that.
side alternate compressor station. Top. What's
Have now wall construction, very heavy steel, recent, primarily mats, for the just mats that stop sound from the stop absorptions. Building shell that leaves. Have heavy density. Quiet.
several thousand gas compressor stations.
Well, let me. We've been involved in science. Metric use does not capture excess.
Census.
It's just a standard information. That's
Times.
not necessarily, but still. Still know allowed it.
Also, efficient was, as you stated, you can only see 9 decibels. That 2 hour period.
Yeah. That's.
Just average. That's.
It's shit. It's probably, frankly, if we pick a given distance, it's probably.
Is there any steps?
In the end, describe methodologies.
No objection.